Okay. Good to see you all, guys. Welcome back to a different sort of Flatterday night tonight, as you can see. We have been graced with the presence of Jason Breshears, as you know, who is Archaics channel. Okay, with a much anticipated collaboration and chat concerning, the discoveries and research of myself and Jason. Two very forward-thinking researchers, I would say. The one thing that I will say about you, Jason, is you do put in your due diligence, and I totally respect that.
Thank you.
So he's very well researched, one of the best in the world, and he really knows his stuff. And it just independently and like parallels collided with my mode of thinking. So is the nature of consciousness. So we're going to talk about some of these subjects of the reset. The meaning of life and the nature of the realm of which we live in, and the ever-expanding evolution of consciousness that we're all sharing together, which I'm really grateful for. Thank you all. Jason, it's time to you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here, and we can thank our mutual friend for making this happen. The same one that made the meetup happen. She's exploding with energy, and she seems to be all over the place, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's omnipresent. She's omnipresent. Front row seat, Cheryl. Thank you so much.
Yeah. We're talking about Cheryl. You guys know who we're talking about.
Yeah, there she is. So thank you for that. So the magic's here anyway. So reset. Now let's. There are differences in our research. One of them that came up early on was the chronology. And you talk about the plasma reset or the plasma calendar, if you like, being derived or coming from ancient Mayan tablets or the Mayan calendar. Yeah.
Yeah, the Mayan. Yes, the Mayan calendar. It's an extinct system. It's a system that worked prior to a reset that actually changed the number of days in the year. The Mayan calendar no longer works. This is why over 200 authors in German, French, and English had books about the end of the Mayan long count, Doomsday 2012, and every single one of those authors was wrong. And it's because they were imposing a modern day chronology of 365.24 days on an older system that did not recognize that year. This most ancient calendar was developed in its first 2,000 years of use was under a 360-day year, but something terrible happened. And what it did was it slowed the stellosphere. This sky, it doesn't matter what your paradigm is. It doesn't matter if you believe the planets are real and all that. The sky itself slowed by 5 days and a quarter of a day every single year. And that one small detail in the year 713 BC, which has been recorded widely by many different authors, that this event happened and the change in the calendar is a real historical event. This one single episode in history changed every chronological system in the world except the 138-year Phoenix phenomenon. Because the 138-year Phoenix phenomenon is a type of programming. It has nothing to do with the natural stellosphere, the motion of the planets, the motion. It's on a different mechanism. It's very difficult for people to wrap their minds around it. That's why they have to actually see the chronological events as they unfold every 138 years before 713 BC, and then every 138 years after, all the way up till 1902. And then when they see that, in my Archaics veterans, they know what I'm talking about. Once you see that, you can't forget it. If every system in the world changed their calendars in 1 year, and it changed the chronological systems and calendars of every event after that, except one unique phenomenon that happens every 138 years, which involves these very cleverly hidden edits in society, edits in economics, edits in belief systems, edits in actual texts that appear or disappear. Whole libraries, even human civilizations vanish or just suddenly appear in these 138-year intervals. And yet, in almost every incident, this is covered up with some type of natural disaster phenomena that takes the stage in the narrative. All the focuses is on the moon turning red, rocks falling from the sky, lightning bolts, flux tube activity, these electrical discharges that pass between the sky and fortifications that melt these buildings and make them look like archaeologists find them. Whole areas that are covered in water are now shift and become deserts, and the seashells are evident that there were prior bodies of water in very recent history, and yet now they're deserts with cactus and stuff. So this phenomenon every 138 years though has something attached to it, and that is this level of deception. Something else is trying to make these edits look like natural disasters when they're anything but. This is a cover-up, and these things, this phenomenon has caused some people to lose their minds. You've seen the little videos on reset eyes, and you've done one of those. Some people just lose their mind. The whole change in the programming, they can't make the switch, and they're stuck in the old paradigm. They lose their minds, so they got to put them in these insane asylums. They got to find reasons why they're guilty of crime, so they can go ahead and execute them and get them out of the way. They need to find reasons why they can use some type of socio-political scenario to put them in concentration camps, starve them to death, and kill them. They have to be removed from the system because their mind is still attached to the previous paradigm, pre-edit, and they haven't made the switch like the rest of the population. The rest of the population is fooled. However, there are elements in the population. There are people that are so awake that they know what happened, they realize what happened, and they write books about it. And this is where I get most of my archaics data. People like Charles Fort, who specifically...
Charles Fort, Book of the Damned. Wow,
yeah, he wrote 4 books. They're all excellent. Book of the Damned was the first. But Charles Fort even called 1902, after documenting hundreds of items about the year 1902 and 1903, because a Phoenix year goes from May to May. Phoenix is not like our calendar. The Phoenix year of 1902 went from May 1902 to the beginning of May 1903, and that's where all this unusual phenomena happens that I've documented on my channel. And Charles Fort called that period of time another dark age. He did not try to guess what really happened. All he did was document all the things that did happen, and they don't make sense in retrospect. When we try to piece it together, it was just fundamental changes in the architecture of our reality, so many that I've had to produce like 80 something videos just showing people all the data of all this stuff, and I still have more data coming in. It's unbelievable, and yet 95 to 99% of humanity lives through these resets without knowing anything unusual happened, and they only suspect it later on when they start talking to people, and then all of a sudden it's a Mandela effect to them, because they're like, that's not how things happen. That's not how I was alive then. That's not how things happen. But 20 years later, all the history books say this is exactly how it happened. And then because the history books say that, and so many people believe the history books, then all these things start manifesting into the program. All this evidence starts appearing to conform with the new reality, which is untrue.
Wow.
It's deep. The Phoenix phenomenon is deep. It's so deep that many people come to my channel and leave within watching the first 2 or 3 Phoenix videos. They're gone. And a lot of them come back. A lot of them come back, but some people just can't deal with this reality.
The edit, it makes
it's so well documented.
Sense. It makes so much sense with the overlapping timelines. You know, the strangeness, the change is rapid. You know, it's a bit like the movie Dark City, but the edit. You know, I'm pleased you explained that.
I haven't seen
deeper context. Yeah, they shift the whole realm overnight when everybody's resting, and like literally new history, new everything, and everyone's just hey ho on with the show. A bit like what they've done with this, you know, this cycle, but it makes so much sense with the arrivals. You know, not knowing really, it's just like like we're in, you know, like you said, some of us in your remembering.
Right. Well, look, we have this The last three Phoenix years were 1902, 1764, and 1626. Every one of those are 138 years apart. 138 is not an arbitrary number. 138 is actually attached to the fine structure constant known to physicists, which is a variable that cannot be absolutely determined by physicists. They can only get closer and closer to the truth because it fluctuates at 137 point something, but it's not quite 138. But in order to be a linear pattern in the holography, there must be a minute break. That break is necessary for it to be a pattern, or it wouldn't be a pattern. The breaks are necessary to identify the 138-year periodicity. So this Phoenix phenomenon is connected to the very structure of our reality itself, because that's what the fine structure constant is. But it also seems to defy and totally ignore 1.618, which is the golden proportion. It is 5.
I'm getting goose pimples.
Yeah, it also ignores 3.1416, which is pi. It also ignores 5.08, which is curvature, which is determined by phi times pi to produce the moving curve. So these main physics principles govern the unfolding of events throughout the human life, and we see the unfolding of these mathematical constructs every day in our lives when you pay attention to them. But the 138-year structuring of the Phoenix defies all that, just like it defied the addition of 5.24 days to the calendar that we experience today. Because anybody can verify that the year is 365.24 days. Anybody can verify by that. But if you look at all the material from Velikovsky, from Harold T. Wilkins, from Thor Heyerdahl, when you assimilate all the data from all the greatest scholars who all published that the old world only knew 1 year, and it was 360 days. And when you divide all the ancient calendar systems by 360 days, you find out really quick, damn, this is true. Then you look at the historical record and you find citation after citation from Marcus Varro to Ammianus Marcellinus. There are hundreds of ancient authors that all talk about this event that changed. It was something in the sky that changed the year from 360 to 365.24 days. This major edit in the way we perceive the passage of time is real, and yet the Phoenix phenomenon totally ignored it. It didn't care about the addition of 5 days. Every 138 years, like clockwork, it still occurs, which is interesting because the Phoenix in ancient records is called the keeper of the calendar. And it was always venerated by, like in Egypt, it was venerated by a goddess of the calendar. But the Phoenix itself is described in the Gnostic records that were discovered in 1947, the Nag Hammadi library. The Phoenix is specifically mentioned, and it says that the Phoenix was created to keep the archons in check. And when you research what the archons are, you find that they're the lords of time as applied to the control systems over humanity. The archons were sometimes good, sometimes bad, but they created narratives that humans lived out.
Yes, we're doing it for them. Yes, I know.
In the archons, they manipulate time. They cause time dilations. They cause and the archons do everything to deceive us and all kinds of different things. But the Phoenix was designed to keep them in check. And Nostradamus understood the Phoenix chronology. I've got that widely published.
I covered him in my last book, brother. First time I ever heard that word, Nostradamus, it sent ripples through my existence. I didn't even know what that word meant. Right. So I've been on a quest for him. I even went to the town in south of France where he was born.
Wow.
No, really.
Look, here's something very unusual. So there's a French scholar named Mario Reading. He published a book like in 2004, 2005, and he claims to have discovered a cleverly hidden date index that was mentioned in a letter by Nostradamus to his son,
Michael
Caesar. So he had a son named Caesar, and Michel del Nostradam wrote another letter to the King of France. When you put these two letters together, it's talking about Nostradamus actually dated his quatrains. They're not all rambled and jumbled, and they're not subject to interpretation. The exact dates for the events are coded in the quatrains. So Mario Reading explains how you decipher this deal. And I learned, I read his book and I found out, I said, wow, this is genius.
Sure, I read the Erica Cheetham wrote. I haven't actually heard that version.
I have read 3 different books that were all published about Nostradamus's quatrains by Erica Cheetham, but she does not use this date.
I've never heard that. So
now, the date index is interesting because Nostradamus, in another letter to his son Caesar, also mentioned the phoenix by name. He also mentioned how the last days were to be understood once the year 1903 was over. So all this, I have all this published in my published book called Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse. You said, in an email later today, just send me your mailing address and I'll send you a copy of that book. But
I'll send you a copy of mine.
Cool. All this data on Nostradamus's cleverly hidden date index was published by Mario Reading. So Mario Reading puts it out and nobody's paying attention to his book. Nobody cares about his book. Mario Reading committed the cardinal sin of publishing. And he discovered a date index that can be verified over and over and over, and historically verified with events that have already passed. And yet, when it came to modern events during our lifetime, he fell prey to what a lot of authors fell prey to with the 2012 stuff. And he found things in the quatrains that he thought were referring to 2012 because he bought into all that narrative about 2012, which was not the end of the Mayan long count. The end of the Mayan long count ends in November 2046. And I show this extensively in mathematics and charts, and I've had many other researchers come behind it and verify that my calculations are absolutely precise. Because in the Mayan system, you have to count all 1,872,000 days from 3113 BC all the way into the future. Wow. And that ends November 2nd of 2046. The 2012 date was invoked because of very bad scholarship and about 200 authors who never got a calculator out and did the math themselves. They just went with what the scholars published. You cannot take the Mayan long count, which was predicated on a 360-day period, and then apply 365.24 days to the whole system. You can't do that. But when you do that, you get 2012. When you go by the Mayan mathematics and you account for the 713 BC anomaly when the calendar changed, it's perfect. Not only is it perfect, but each 144,000 day Bacton that leads up to the 13th Bacton in 2046 lands on a year where something very interesting happened all the way throughout history. I have a book published called Anunnaki Homeworld that talks about this, but since then I've released way more new data. So getting back to Mario Reading's date index, it's amazing. Using only his date index, all the quatrains that talk about the moon turning red as blood, rocks falling from the sky, the kings and chiefs of the earth growing terrified and hiding in the underworld, oceans slipping their basins, and coastal cities, 2 of them named. One of them is Londonum, the city of Brutus is in the quatrains. The other one is the new city of apples. Both of these cities in the month of May in 2040 are going to be underwater. This is according to Nostradamus in his date index. So when you look at the date index of Nostradamus, all this stuff that I've published about the Phoenix happening in the month of May in 2040 is in Nostradamus's writings. Nostradamus specifically warns the reader. He says, be warned, there will be a great troubling in the month of May. And the date index for that statement is 2040. And Mario Reading didn't know anything about the Phoenix phenomenon or the 138-year sequencing and still nailed it on 1903 and on 2040. He nailed it precisely, not knowing any of these things, just going by the date index that was revealed in Nostradamus's quatrains. And looking at only the quatrains that are identified in the date index, You even find the number 138 encoded in the centuries written by Nostradamus. Nostradamus knew everything.
Oh, yeah, I know.
He knew about the phoenix. He knew about the timing. He knew that there was going to be a great destruction, and he goes into detail that right after May of 2040, there's going to be mass migrations from the Americas, the continent, the new Atlantis, the continent on the other side of the Atlantic, and there will be a mass flooding of people coming to Europe and the Mediterranean, returning to the lands of their ancestors' nativity. Nostradamus saw all that. There's huge demographic changes happening in the world because of the 2040 event. So, and all that research is absolutely independent, 100% independent of the Phoenix material, because Mario Reading didn't know any of that material.
Yeah, well, I need to read it. I need to read it. You know, the quatrains, you know, they've had all sorts of different translations, you know.
Yes, they do.
Allegorical and what have you, but you know, he's just nailed so much. You know, he said about the Prince of Corsica, you know, turning into a great emperor, and then you had Napoleon and the great games in London, and he sort of mentioned that the dead would rise, and it's like just coincidentally with, you know, the Olympic Games and all of the strangeness that unfolded following that. So yeah, he's definitely on the money, and there's definitely a feeling with it all. These codes and these ciphers that you're onto, I get a real feel for, Jason. You know, I guess it's a magic. It's like
Martin, you have to understand this is something that I'm always telling my listeners, because it's vitally important that people understand this tenet. If something is true, it will always be seen from multiple different mathematical vantage points. This is my litmus test. This is why on my channel, when I'm asserting a point, I will show 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways to get to the same point. Because when I'm doing my research, if I find something that's very interesting and I can't find any collaborating or anything that commiserates with
Don't run with it.
It's a coincidence, and I need to leave it alone.
I'm the same. I'm exactly the same. I just need to, like, you know, correspond. I just, you know, when it's true, it just resonates anyway. You just get that feeling, and that you just can't leave her alone. But some, you know, this whole subject, you know, what some might call the terrifying truth of it all, it gives you a new perspective on the realm, doesn't it? You know, on your whole life viewpoint.
Well, let's put it in perspective, okay? Okay,
yeah, please.
So, what does the Phoenix phenomenon mean to us in the immediacy? In the immediacy, the very fact that something has been so well meticulously documented from so many different perspectives and sources, time periods, and different authors, researchers, and putting it all together, the very fact that this is real absolutely infers the impossibility that we're living in a natural world as presented by the science.
100%.
We cannot be living in the world.
We cannot be.
We cannot be living in the world of Newtonian science. It does not work. None of it's true. This is why the sky to me is a stellosphere. It is exactly what is described in Genesis as luminaries. They're not described as another world out there. It's described as luminaries that allow us a lot of information if we study them. You can translate that into astronomy. You can translate that into astrology. You can translate that to its base common denominator as pattern recognition. Any way you want to look at it, the sky is designed, is specifically said, for times, seasons, calculations, for us to be able to basically live by calendars. This is what because if there was no sky that showed us stars, there would be almost no way to calculate the passage of time itself, other than something that has been historically been shown to be an error, which is the motion of the sun has changed 4 times in human history. The motion of the moon doesn't even count because it's in a dead movement. We're only seeing one face, meaning that we're looking at a cookie cutter image in holography. We're not looking at a real sphere. We're looking at something that everybody in the world has only seen one face of the moon. And that's for a reason. It's not a real orb. It's not on a real orbit. The moon is something else. Now, because there are people like Crow 777 that have actually shown video where
yeah.
you
Yeah, I've
can,
had him on my channel
yeah,
showing
you
it.
can see the stars through the dark part of the moon.
I
You
know.
can also see where the sky sim actually upgrades.
Glitches.
Every few seconds, it upgrades. It's like a line that passes
Wave.
over the whole sky, and everything moves slightly. This is how the stellosphere works. It's just like a television. It only shows a certain amount of images and frames per second. The human eye can't even detect those frames. You have to slow a camera down and look. But when you do, like Crow 777 did, he thought it was a lunar wave. I have commented on his channel. I don't even know if he ever responded to it, but I have commented on his channel and say, "Hey man, congratulations on your discovery. I do believe that lunar wave actually is a line that passes over the entire stellosphere, but you can't see it against that black background. You can just see it against the white of the moon." So I believe it passes over the whole sky, and I believe it does it about 60 times a second. And you got to slow a camera down to be able to see it. But every time it passes, every pass, there are slight variations in the changes, and it gives us the illusion that the things in the sky are moving when they're not. When they're not.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I believe the sky is technological, just like the Phoenix. The Phoenix is not an intruder planet.
Yeah, lights, luminaries. I will go with that. You know, that's all we can really know. They can't get up high enough to take a look anyway.
You're right, absolutely. I see when you're trying to marry different concepts, we have to reduce them to their lowest common denominators, Martin. So this is why I have fully embraced all my flat earth brothers to talk to them about all stuff, because I have on my shelf, I have what is the main one that always cites zetetic astronomy? Oh, Gleason's book. I have
Gleason. Gleason.
Yeah, from 1890s. I have Gleason's book. I also on my channel showed Eric Dubay. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Dubay,
I've showed his book on my channel and flipped through it. I don't know. I don't know where I stand with Eric Dubay. I've met somebody that knows him, but he had been haunting my channel for a little while, but other than that, I don't know anything about him. But I did show off his book on my channel. I am on board with the fact that because from a computer simulated perspective, any time that a coder wants to begin to build a virtual universe, he has to start with a flat plane. There's no other way to build upon the
Minecraft. Like Minecraft.
Yes, all programmers will tell you they'll start on a flat plane, and then they can introduce holography that gives the player the idea that they can go up, down, left, right, go on. But in actuality, they're not moving. It's the whole holo field that has this world is moving around them. I call this a reality tunnel.
I know. It's a biggie with me. It's a biggie. It's all emotion. I realize, and I feel that I feel that my soul is still not exactly, I'm not moving. I'm not emotion. The whole world is in emotion around me.
Well, hey, I want to address a crossover between your research and mine. I don't know how deep you've gone into this, but I'm going to tell you now with my own listeners, I have not even talked about this subject, but I am pretty much convinced, unless somebody can show me a lot of counter evidence, but I am pretty much convinced that those tails of comets and what we're seeing with the rockets entering in the halo orbit, which is not in space. Halo is high altitude, low orbit. It's still under this firmament. But what we see, to me, looks just like when energy or semi-physical objects are passing through water. This is what it almost comet tails, things that are high in the sky, unusual aerial phenomena that I see in the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th century woodcuts. All these pictures from it doesn't make sense to me why we're seeing. It looks like if you were underneath a lake and you were looking up through
a speedboat going overhead.
Yes, if you see a speedboat going overhead,
and it looks exactly the same.
The water tail passing through light is identical to a comet.
Well, doesn't it show that it's a medium of water that we're dealing with up there, and here as well? It's just a thinner viscosity, but we're definitely.
I'm on board that there's an ocean above, and that NASA has done everything to keep us from that fact. This is why I don't believe we have satellites up there. Everything is in halo orbit on balloons. Everything. I mean, it becomes ridiculous the more we. I don't even want to get into NASA. I have whole videos about NASA. It's just
really.
the whole narrative that they pushed on us is almost as if, let's build this little go-kart and put tinfoil on there and let's see how many believe this bullshit. And it's almost like they want us to disbelieve, and it's almost as if they're like, I can't believe these people believe this bullshit.
Yeah, man.
But even the rockets, even all this crap of SpaceX and Elon Musk sending rockets up there,
it's ridiculous. You know, reverse thrust. The thing can go backwards and land with
I refuse to believe that the U.S. military spent so much money on Operation Fishbowl and then did not share that information with the corporate America.
Yeah,
there's no way.
I know, it just makes no sense.
There's no way.
The biggest investment since World War II. You know, enough chucked into it. You know, and no information of what went on.
I believe that 1963. That was it. They learned 100% that we are in a containment field, and there ain't no getting out. So they once they realize there's no going up, and they tried at different areas of the Pacific and Atlantic, and they realized, okay, there's no going up. That's when they started going to the edge, and they tried to do their experiments and all this shit there. So I don't know. I'm not an authority on these topics. I'm a simulationist, and as a simulationist, I have seen no evidence of other continents yet, although I know it's a popular theory. However, I am on board with the fact that several parts we have found, like the Voynich manuscript, it doesn't make sense unless there is another landmass that is populated by humans that we have not yet had contact with or publicized contact with. And the reason I say this is because we have U.S. cryptologists that are now using sophisticated software to decipher Sanskrit, decipher the Tarim Basin texts that have been found under the Gobi Desert, and this civilization that went from the Tarim Basin all the way to the Gobi in Asia. We have these cryptologists, and this software is able to decipher enemy codes, all kinds of stuff, and yet every test they have done on the Voynich manuscript shows that it's some type of linguistic text. It has patterns, but we have absolutely no way to translate this book.
Incredible, isn't it?
Where did it come from? Because it didn't come from Europe, it didn't come from Asia, it didn't come from Australia, it didn't come from New Zealand, it didn't come from any known area, because linguists, this is what they do. And I will always defer to the professionals in their field. I'm never gonna unless it's absolutely ridiculous. But when it comes to linguistics, I'm not a master, but I can cite the masters, and they are baffled as to the origin of this text. And it's not one, there's four of them. The Voynich manuscript. The Voynich manuscript is only one book. It's the most famous, but nobody's been able to crack it and decipher it. And that's a problem, because there should be somewhere in the world a Rosetta Stone type document that would allow us to understand how to break this down. So, so there are parts that are inexplicable outside the context of there's another population that's accessible to us, but they're not in any known parts of the world that we know of today.
Yeah. Well, I definitely feel that there's other lands, even in a simulation, you know, maybe it's just because we haven't seen it there. It hasn't rendered just yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a look at it like our world, which you've seen on a flat earth map, the official United Nations map, the NASA map is all flat earth map. I just showed one in a video yesterday. I just released a video yesterday. It's only 8 minutes long, but I show a flat earth map that's from a book from 1859. But it's not, I don't know about the rendering part, because I think that anything that exists in the past or in the future also exists now.
That is it.
We can look at this from the perspective of, we are so infinitely small that our world seems to be huge, but this could be just one spiritual ant farm next to thousands of others.
I would go with that. I really do think that there are others. I think that they're possibly aware of us. You know, the whole Phoenix narrative is it's tightly encoded into the whole alchemical architecture. It's just absolutely everywhere, the whole narrative for it. You know, I was only looking earlier at Sir Christopher Wren and the famous narrative after the Great Fire of London. St Paul's Cathedral burns down, and then just out of pure coincidence, they find a stone that says Resurgam, which is to rise from the flames. And that stone is there today. You can see it in St Paul's Cathedral.
I have a video about that. I showed that.
Yeah,
stone.
sure.
I showed
So
the
it
stone
just
and
tells
the
you that this event, you know, it's in the narrative. It for sure is. Homer's Iliad, you know, the fall of it's the fall of the classical world. It all got melted. Charles thought, though, he did say there was two methods of purification. He said that one was definitely plasma and the other water.
Yeah. Well, in the you know what? I don't even want to mispronounce this, but it's Kairosis of the ancient Greeks. The epikairosis of the ancient Greece was a theological model that the world goes through periods of destruction. One is by water, one is by fire, and in its long periods that stretch out. Theopompus thought it was 3,000 years, every 3,000 years. I don't know, but the epikairosis. I can't believe I can't remember how to pronounce that word, but this I will say this: if we're dealing with other lands, then by necessity, I'm thinking that the greatest access to any other lands, no matter what state of development your infrastructure is in, would be by sea. So if it's by sea, and we have so many different ship's logs of islands, like outside of Easter Island, there was Davis Island.
Yes,
Davis Island was populated, and it was mentioned on old British charts.
Try and find it today.
Yeah, one day English navigators are going by, and they recorded that Davis Island wasn't there anymore. They had to circle around because they thought they'd lost their bearings. And
I know. Yeah,
and they realized, Davis Island, full of people, just vanished. It was gone. But it's not the only one. William Corliss has the Source Book Project, and he documents many other civilizations that were identified, cataloged. Their longitude and latitude was recorded, and then all of a sudden they're gone. Which basically leads us to 1626. That was on the 138-year timeline. So was 1764. And then 1902. I don't want to go into 1902 because my own listeners, they already know I've got like 81 videos on the Phoenix, and many of them address 1902 and 1903. But when it comes to 1764, we have something very unique as well. That was 138 years earlier. But as soon as 1764 came down, in 1763, we had a world of Europe controlled by kings and queens, dukes, barons, robber barons, all that. And then in 1 year's time, all of a sudden, revolutions just erupted in the 13 colonies. Boston Tea Party spread throughout the British Crown. It spread throughout Europe. And within a 20-year period, all the monarchies of Europe collapsed to republics and democracies. United States collapsed from 13 royal colonies into a republic, a constitutional republic. This massive change in the demographics happened on a Phoenix year. And 1764 was also noted for many inventions that suddenly appeared on the world stage that now allowed for Western expansionism, being able to feed multitudes of people, and led to many other things like the development of steam engines, development of all kinds of things that were just on the horizon. So 138 years before that was 1626. 1626, North America only had 3 or 4 Spanish constructions that were like little holdings and colonies that were spread far out. And there was a small, tiny English presence of a few hundred people on the eastern coast. 1626, something happened to North America.
Brenoke, are you talking about?
Yeah, that was 1587, 1597, when the very first English colonies, they vanished, completely gone. So, they were investigated by others that came in. But now listen, I don't want to turn that too much into a mystery, because Roanoke could have been, because the English were laying claim by putting a colony there, they were laying claim to the coast. Gotcha. That could have been Portuguese or Dutch came in and murdered those people.
Yeah.
Kidnapped them and then tied a stone around their legs and sank every one of those people to the bottom of the sea.
Keel holds them all.
Because this was a territorial war. Everybody was trying to get chunks out of North America, and if the English already had a colony there, they had a royal claim, and they could have sent warships to defend it. So the best thing to do for a competitor was to come in there, round everybody up, make it look like a mystery, take them out to sea and sink them so they'll never be seen again.
Yeah,
Now,
I think that stuff happens in the real time, in the real days, for sure.
So yeah, I know a lot of channels have tried to turn that into a big mystery, but I think really we have to look at it from its lowest common denominator, that this was a land grab war and nobody had control of North America yet. So this was the 1580s and 1590s. So nobody respected the Spanish claim that they had all North America. Nobody respected it. They ignored it. And after the Spanish lost almost their entire armada going around Ireland, it was
Funny
over.
how that worked out, wasn't it?
Yeah. So they were awesome. It was a huge power move to sail all the way around England in the armada, and then they got wiped out.
This is why I just think it's all technology, you know. I like think that, you know, I'm in the school of thought that this is a comet that we're talking about.
Yeah, so we have this scenario in 1626 where people like Static in the Attic and others have showed maps. They've showed maps of the early 1600s. They don't look like anything after 1626. 1626 now has the Great Lakes. They don't even show up on any prior map.
Yeah,
it's crazy. The Great Lakes don't even show up on any prior maps, but your uniformitarian evolutionists are all claiming that it took hundreds of thousands of years of glaciers to melt to create those Great Lakes, but that's not what the geology shows, and that's not what the ancient maps show. Hell, the maps from 600 years ago don't even have ice in Antarctica.
Nowhere.
They have mountain ranges and rivers and coasts, and it's all been verified.
Everywhere's green and lush. You know, I covered in the first book, you know, plasma resets, you know, pretty much what we're talking about. But I've shown evidence of North Africa, the Sahara Desert, being a green and lush land with a beautiful glittering civilization, where it is now dust.
Well, you do know in the writings of Strabo, who is a Greek geographer, also in Diodorus Siculus, who was also a historian and geographer, they both mention that North Africa, Sahara Desert, almost the entire thing used to be called the Triton Sea.
Oh, interesting.
It was called the Triton Sea, and because of a disaster, it drained out. Now, that goes in tandem with my own presentations where I show that the ancients were well aware that the Great Pyramid complex was underwater, and this is where the water damage came on the Sphinx and on the Sphinx temple, because the white limestone casing blocks were on all three pyramids and they protected the pyramids from water damage. But over 900 years ago, an Arab geographer named Al-Biruni wrote a book he wrote a book called The Wonders of All Nations, and in that book he describes the Great Pyramids having a brown ocean stain halfway up the monuments. But somebody, since he recorded that, has removed all those casing stones. But what they couldn't remove was in the 1760s and 1770s, Englishman Frederick Norton Lewis traveled to Egypt, and he studied the Great Pyramids when they were still half buried in sand. And the Sphinx, he drew it, it's up to its neck in sand. He drew it all. And then he also documented that the entire Giza Plateau was covered in seashells and fossils of marine life. So all this has been swept under the rug and hidden by Egyptologists. They act like Napoleon didn't dig all these pyramids out with his army.
That How Wace, he's not actually, he made a statement. He's not actually happy with me, apparently.
Hollis can't stand my guts. So
he hates my guts. I proposed like the pyramids may have been Noah's Arks because of their basically their beaver dam technology. You know, they could withstand a wave hitting it because of
an ark is a container of knowledge. And in the Akkadian tablets, cuneiform tablets, we have a story that Utnapishtim was specifically told, or Atrahasis was specifically told, to build a city and a monument and to conceal the libraries of the pre-flood world in a container so they would be preserved through the flood. And then after the flood, go back to that location and get them out so you can start your libraries after the flood. Well, he's describing an ark. An ark is anything that is
archive. It makes so much sense.
It's an archive. He's describing an ark. An ark is not just a ship. It's only called an ark because it preserves things through a disaster. That is what an ark is for. This is what the Ark of the Covenant was in the Old Testament. It was never to be used for a long period of time. That's why they quit using it after they settled in the land of Israel. It's because the ark was only temporary to get them through a tumultuous period. But it was to protect things. Now, I'm not telling you here that that story is true. I'm telling you that's what the narrative is. That's what the use of the ancient Egyptian ark was for. It was to carry something of great value from one location to another. But it's all
super interesting. Yeah, just want to just throw this out there for the help of people out there, actually. You know, there was some, you know, all ancient civilizations have gone missing. So we pretty much know why. But it's one of them with the, you know, there's a few of them like the Essenes themselves who knew about this realm. And you know, they've hijacked consciousness to manifest it for them, the archons, whatever you want to call them. But it's actually ours, and the world is our oyster, and that we can manifest through positive intent. And this, you know, and there is more, lots more to this, whatever this is, this reality.
Oh, there's no doubt. The Essenes are very interesting.
Very.
We don't know. We just surmise that the Essenes are the culture that left the Dead Sea Scrolls. We don't know. It's a theory. And I'm not for or against it. But what's interesting to me is that whoever left the Dead Sea Scrolls, the scholar Akaria S., who wrote some really profound material about the Old Testament and the New Testament, she had done her research on the Dead Sea Scrolls and determined that the culture who left those records were waiting on an apocalypse event that involved the Phoenix cycle. She published this. I cite her, but she mentions the Phoenix a lot too, and she believed it was something that happened over 500 years had to pass before a Phoenix cycle, and because it was that period of time, people often forgot it. But yeah, it's Akaria S is her name, and she has some really good writings about those Dead Sea Scrolls as well, and how they relate to Cataclysm. They were a doomsday cult.
Yeah, they were a doomsday cult. Did you ever look into the work of Michael Drosnin and the Bible Code?
I did. Yeah. I read the book like within.
Well, I've got all of them, and I cited them in my book as well, because you know Elijah Rips, who created the skip code. You know, they literally averted the assassination of Rabin. By
Rabin,
what was coming out.
Okay, I'm gonna put this in perspective about Michael Drosnin's research. All right.
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay. We're dealing with ancient Hebrew Masoretic texts where the individual characters carry numerical value. Now, we're also dealing with a fanatical scribal tradition of absolute preservation of older texts into the newer texts. You know that they counted the bottom of the scrolls. The scroll counts had to be counted. Now, this is also the same culture that promotes all the Talmudic writings, the Midrashic text. This is the same culture, and it's got some really effed up stuff in the Talmud.
Yeah, I guess really gnarly. Yeah,
now, this is why a lot of people are turned off on my own channel. Just because I expose this one dark aspect of the Hebrew culture doesn't mean all Jewish people are evil at all. But there is an element to their culture that is
we are all aware of some of their strange practices in the flat earth.
Yes, very nefarious activity. Which was recorded by the Romans and recorded by the French,
and banned from every single country in Europe.
Yes, absolutely. These are things I'll be discussing on archaics.tv. I'm not going to talk about them on YouTube.
No, it's best not.
But anyway, with Michael Drosnin's code, this is 100% evidence to me that we live in a simulated context, because codes within codes within codes within codes are exactly what we're experiencing right now.
Honestly, it was in a matrices. Everything in the world that ever existed is in the Torah matrices. It's,
right. This is why somebody who is very spiritually attuned, they can choose a method that allows them to see the cracks in the holosphere. It doesn't matter if it's astrology. It doesn't matter if it's gematria. It doesn't matter if it's these Bible codes. It doesn't matter if it's they invent their own occult system of interpreting reality, because many people have. It doesn't matter how their method entails, because if they're spiritual, they're led by intuition, and intuition is going to reveal to them the right information, whether the method is incorrect or not. It doesn't even matter. So what Michael Drosnin has found using computer software is very real to me, because like I said, if something is true, it's going to be seen from multiple different mathematical vantage points. So if things are already codified to happen in the overall construct, that doesn't mean that they're codified to happen in the individual. And this is another message on my channel. We're living in two separate, distinct realities at the same time.
Yeah, it would show that.
One of them is highly specific to you. It's your reality tunnel. Your own personal reality tunnel is not governed by the collective, but it can be, depending upon how you react with your environment and the information you get. Or you can be a highly individualized immortal soul, and you can begin observing reality objectively, and then reality will start playing a game with you. It will start showing you what's real as opposed to what's not. But it doesn't mean you will have the ability to show other people how fake and artificial everything is, because this is an observer-dependent construct. And you can learn things standing right next to somebody who is absolutely blind and not vibrating on the same frequency you are. So Michael Drosnin's discoveries actually show me that there are multiple layers to this holography, and it's just like a Mandelbrot set. The more you look at the code, the more of the code reveals to be repetitive, patterned, and yet still changing slightly in its nuances, which means we can translate that to applications, which means in the collective, you can follow all the narratives and they'll still be fed to you. But if you want to change your perspective in a Mandelbrot set, you'll see a whole new reality unfold that other people can't see. You'll see something else. So
fractal nature of the realm.
It's the nature of the spirit. We're really creating our own realities in the individual. It's only in the collective that everything is fixed. Prophecy is fixed. Events are fixed. Major events in world history, they're fixed. This is a program, and we are immortal souls passing through it. And your level of life is dependent upon how much you have an exchange of information with the oversoul. When you finally give up trying to save the world and you start trying to enjoy it.
Wow. Well put. I couldn't have put that better myself.
It's a common message on my channel. I'm always reminding my listeners that, because a lot of people they've developed psychoses. They've gone into the great acute depression. They have transferred that depression to their children and their family, because they have this innate desire as a spiritual being to save the world. But you're not here to do that. This is a construct, and you were designed to pass through it. You can wake up people in your immediate environment, but the construct itself will go to war with you if you try to save the construct from itself. This is a program, and you can't fight the program. You will always lose. What you can do is live by example. If you want other people to see and experience the things you enjoy, then you have to be that beacon. Can't tell people, you have to show them. That's another tenet of my channel. I'm not trying to tell people stuff. I'm always showing and demonstrating, because this is how you reach other souls. Souls do not react to preaching. They do not react.
They don't.
They don't react to verbiage, period. They react to frequency.
Frequency and emotion, and as you said, intuition, which is my greatest gift in this place, I think.
Intuition is a predecessor of knowledge. It will always lead you right.
Yes, honestly. You need the right amount of intellect to balance it so you can get it right, or try to.
I agree.
But I think it's it could be a fabulous life for everybody if, they could just drop opposition, work this thing out, and know how easy it is to interact with it, and change. You've done stuff that's like changed reality in a way, in a manner of speaking. Jason.
My own reality has changed considerably. Martin, I've only been out of prison 6.5 years.
Well,
and
that's remarkable.
In that 6.5 years, my first 3 years were like oil and gas. I was working hard, and I did all that just to buy a 2018, Harley Davidson Fat Boy motorcycle, and then and then for a while I ended up living on it. So, yeah, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any
I'm not
money.
laughing. That's really bad, but yeah, that's
I
cool.
was living on it. And then I started my YouTube channel from basically a wooden shack. It's exactly what it was. It was a
Wow.
house that had fallen apart, and the house itself had been built in the 30s or 40s. It was already falling apart. That's where I started my YouTube channel. My first like 50 or 60 videos were from inside that environment. You can see it in the background. And that took 300 and something videos before I even broke 1,000 subs.
Wow.
So after I hit 1,000 subs, I started growing a little bit faster. But once I hit 3,000, like 500 subs, I had my first podcast. Then I started growing really fast. And my second podcast was Santos Bonacci. And that launched me. Him and Logan were on the podcast.
Logan, I love Logan, man. Yeah, he's awesome.
And that launched me. But since then, I mean, all I do is demonstrate the very principles that govern my own life. I show my listeners, hey man, this is what I'm doing. I've even done rituals where I show, hey man, hey, here's my list. This is exactly what I did, and this is exactly what happened 24 hours later. And I show exactly the very things that I teach, I live by, and I show how it works in my life. And now I can't ask for a better life. I have an awesome life.
You got an awesome life, and it's highly commendable what you did, and you deserve it. You know, it just goes to show that realm in the past, it doesn't even exist. It's not
doesn't exist.
It was never there. It was just figments in your mind, in your imagination. It was never there.
All restrictions are self-imposed. There's no doubt.
You know it. Yeah. So
there's no doubt.
This has been absolutely. I'm getting shivers all the way through this conversation today, Jason. Just feels really, really right. Yeah, we're getting somewhere, I think. So
I seen one of your videos where you were talking to, I think it was you were talking to two ladies that you had, you're sitting with you, and y'all were talking about, I thought it was interesting because it's something I had looked into. I was going to do a future video about it, but the very fact that so many of our colloquials come from the maritime laws and come from the fact that the shipping guilds, like the East India Trading Company and all these old maritime rules and navigation laws, a lot of people don't realize just how many of our little witty sayings and all that stuff comes straight out of that material.
Sure.
Even the legal parlance in our courts today still mirror the old maritime.
All of it. The finance system, currency, liquidation, you know, and then the whole banking system, the bank itself. That's also a C thing. Every single thing is maritime related in this place. I'm ex-merchant navy, right?
Oh, okay.
So this thing you know, my son, we go on boats, we go out sailing like regularly. This is our thing. The sea has been my life. And my father was a captain, so I grew up on ships.
Well, the old term, that's a long shot.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
that is basically when you're dropping for sounding.
Yeah, and then of course, in America, it's not real popular to say it, although I've said it on my channel a few times. But when you're describing a big mess, you call it flotsam and jetsam.
Flopsam and jetsam. That's what washes up on the beach.
Yeah, and then another one is what is that? When something's going on, but you don't want to do anything in the immediate, you want to wait. You say we're going to wait for that to tide over.
Yeah, you too. We do. We see
I had another one.
What about funerals? Wake.
Yeah, the wake, a funeral wake, that comes from behind the scene.
Well, the whole thing, the birth process. So we're in water. We start in water, then we go through a canal. Okay, a birth, and then we're birthed.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. The whole thing is there.
So what about feeling blue? Do you remember where feeling blue came from?
No.
Look, in the 16th and 17th century, the term feeling blue came. It was very rare, but at sea, if the captain of the ship died at sea, legally by law, they had to fly a blue flag because it told other captains for other nations that ship is off limits. Even at war, they respected the blue flag. But feeling blue, they had to fly a blue flag to let everybody know we do not have a captain right now. Yeah, that's where feeling blue came from. And then taken aback. Taken aback, you know, today in America, taken aback means you're startled, you're surprised,
you're
taken aback. Yeah. So
that's true.
yeah, taking it back was when the sailors got surprised because of a backwind that reversed the sails before they were able to change all the rat lines and all that.
Yeah. When
We're taking it
attacking,
back.
you bang on. It is.
And then I remember one my family used to say all the time, Jason, you need to pipe down. But
That's another one.
that's another one. Pipe down comes straight out of the old naval parlance. But
They used to say to me, Martin, what's wrong with you?
yeah. Yeah, pipe down was
Pipe down.
piping down the hammocks is what it was. It was for
Batten down the hatches. That's another one as well. Make sea ready. I use all the sea, like
Oh,
hold fast. Hold fast.
I need to add that to my list. Batten down the hatches.
Batten down the hatches. Hold
I
fast.
totally forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Toe the line.
Toe the line.
Toe the line's another one from the deal. In the doldrums.
In the doldrums. It just goes on. Feeling the waves.
Okay.
You know?
Dead reckoning comes straight out of the naval parlance.
And with the news as well. So you got an anchorman, haven't you, telling the news?
An anchorman, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
catching you like an anchor. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to stop. Dead in the water is another one.
Network. Network. It's like the fishing, and you get school, which is a school of fishes.
Yeah, man, you're right. Yeah, we can go on. You know what? I'm pretty sure. I can't see the comment section right now because I'm in your StreamYard page. Sure. I can't see it, but I'm pretty sure the comment section's been blowing up with others we haven't even thought about.
Oh, I haven't even looked at it. I've been too engrossed in the conversation actually. But yeah, there's it's just short of 1,000 people there, all buzzing away. I'm sure they're all doing flat British activities. It's usually a loving place anyway. So these are fantastic.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, man. I'm not doing that troll thing.
So hey, in an email, you had mentioned that you mentioned you want to talk about like Antiquitech. So
sure,
I want to verify something because somebody had told me when they found out that you and I were going to be doing a podcast. They had told me some things about your channel that was crossover between mine, and I'm wondering, did you coin the term Antiquitech?
I did.
You did, huh?
I did. I did this live on one of my shows.
Okay.
The only funny thing that happened is one of my friends, Lee, was in the chat and he went, Martin, that's absolute genius, but you're gonna have to spell it right.
Antiquitech, that's badass.
Find a way to spell it, yeah. I just coined loads of terms like antiquitent, we're all just like antiquidead, because I think there was something going on with the dead as well as an energy source, possibly.
Well, the Antiquitech it should be entered into our Merriam-Webster's dictionaries. The word we really need to put together like a truther dictionary that just goes into all these terms like heliolytic.
I think we should. I
think there's listeners too that could probably provide value in that. But it's really come down to it, since the truther community uses so much of its own vernacular.
We do. I'm trying to get away from the phonetics, and isn't it? This is Antiquitech active. Isn't it a coincidence that the Phoenix is, it sounds like Phoenician and phonetics, which is the language we're all, there's a definite connection to me. And even with the Voynich manuscript, it's a very watery theme. I know there's plants on there, we don't know what they are, and but they do look a bit like the cherubim. And I really do feel that there's something going on with, I know I go on about this Phoenician narrative, but we don't know anything about them. They're a mystery. They just see people. They turn up in mass, in mass, and then everything changes. And now we're speaking their language. So something definitely.
Not only that, they built a fortress that the whole world thought for 1,000 years was absolutely impregnable. And even Alexander of Macedon, when he became Alexander the Great, had actually almost given up on the project, but he told his generals to go ahead and just extend the coast. So they literally built a bridge out of rocks and wood and just kept piling it out to get out there, because they knew if they attacked it by ship, it would be impregnable. So they extended the land out to the city of Tyre, which was on its own island. And
the kings of Tyre, that's the Phoenician capital.
Yeah, even King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon couldn't take it. But Yeah,
Yeah.
the Phoenicians were genius. They're absolute genius in everything they do.
Masters of water. I think there's more going on. I think the you know, everyone's pointing a finger, you know, for a culprit, aren't they, in this you know, this artificial thing? But you might find this interesting.
I do, because
Jason.
I've never seen it before.
Right. Well, it's called. It's a French engraving called "Mirrors of the Past." Dictating our future, and it's really, really interesting.
Oh,
But
there's
it
a
has the
Phoenix.
plasma reset.
That's a Phoenix 100%.
Oh, no doubt about it. And it shows, always shows the, you know, the plasma pulse, but it's so heavily encoded. You know, this electromagnetism. I always thought that was the Gorgon, which is the serpent. You know, there's the
Right.
Gorgon there bursting on the floor. But it's weird that there's some sort of selection process going on. So it
Hey,
seems that in
were those
this
were those
reset,
technical? Hey, go to the bottom.
excuse-
Those two skeletons that are embracing, they have technical diagrams attached to them.
well, that's what I was just getting to. Yeah. Well, what it is, I think there's some sort of selection process during Armageddon where, like, you know, you got a ticket to get in the bunker. So this guy, he's like, obviously, he's gone through the reset. The rest are being eaten because they're all dead, and he's wanting, you know, reset food or whatever. There's people here tallying up. And, you know, I'm sure you can see this skeleton here with this symbol that looks like it's, I don't know, a bong or something. So what he's doing, he's holding a charter. So most of them are plasma blind, okay?
Yeah,
because
I see
of the you see it, right?
Yeah,
And
I see it.
you know, the serpents are still it's an allegory for electromagnetism. They're blind from. There's even a song by Jack White, and it says it's the eagle. It says it's the eagle that blinds you, which is the phoenix that blinds you, the flash that blinds you. So they're all blinded and waiting for whatever they're going to get. And these, I'm guessing, are the Freemasons or whoever. It doesn't matter. But the elites who thought that they would get the, you know, the Willy Wonka's golden ticket, which is marked around their neck as a skull and crossbone type of affair. But it's the pyramid and the crossbone. So I'm saying that it is that sort of fraternity. But even they are not faring very well in it all. You'll see.
Yeah.
Not very well at all. But the rest, and it's some sort of, you know, they're doing a deal. They're aware. The elites are aware of this nature of resets. They've left it in contemporary music for us to follow for the longest time.
Okay,
you know.
Martin, now you're going to get an email from me because I need to see these pictures.
I've got hundreds. I've got hundreds just like it. I collect allegorical images. Like this one is like basically the phoenix in allegory, but in alchemical terms. Also shows plasma reset in this book. I can pass you that. Hieroglyphicum, they're a series of books, and all they show is plasma reset. The phoenix is in it over and over again as the main player. Also, the owl seems to be a main player, but always the phoenix as the main player for reset. And these are highly, you know, these are amazing engravings from, you know, and they have this deep Masonic code in as well. We know the pyramids, you know, with it's all hermetics, obviously based, but always the code of the phoenix, the owl you can see down there in the corner. You know, they're fantastical books. These hieroglyphicum, they're called hieroglyphicum, and they are just show you how the whole everything you just explained, but in pictorial form. You know.
Right. Yeah, well, I know I've got several videos showing all the alchemical associations to Phoenix and the reset. But these right here, I'm going to admit to you, I have never seen the ones you're showing me now.
Oh, listen, I'll pass you these, Jason. I've got hundreds. Hieroglyphicums and emblematas, if you get hold of them, they show you the whole story in one picture. You know, the behind the curtains. It's even showing like a sort of celestial sphere or the canopy, even if you like. I think the canopy is then curtains they're showing you in all of the alchemical depictions. It's the canopy, you know, the canopy over it all. The vapor canopy, if you like. And I definitely think there's a time coming when it will be active again. Look at that for an image. Let me blow that up. The sinister, like they don't know what's going on, you know. So I changed to this this fake ass paradigm that they've sold everybody, and the duality, you know, the Janus duality, and so incredibly encoded. But as I say, it's all hermetic. But plasma reset. You see this guy with the legs?
Yep.
Always with the wings open, always with the plasma bolts coming out of it. And it's just every single one of them just explain what you've just said. It's the thing. I tried to attribute to like a weapon technology, which I included, which was the fasces, because the Romans show these plasma bolts and the phoenix wings on their old shields, etc. It's always about the plasma on their shields, and yeah. So well, I went into it in an electromagnetic sense. This was the context of my first book, but it just goes to show that that it's part of the narrative. It's definitely there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's the they would say in a lot. I used the eagle for my decoding, but in hindsight now, when I look back, it was the phoenix. This is the symbol for the Jesuits, and as you can see again, plasma burst coming out of it. Everything is plasma burst, and a Greek coin, plasma burst. It's just you can't even get away from it once you know. It's all deeply encoded into the cross, the cube, all of it. And funny you should mention that. The Ark of the Covenant. Funny, see this picture here? I don't know if you can just see it, but behind there's like what looks like a Faraday cage just behind it.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
That's just like a chain link fence. Yeah, probably to keep the radiation down once it's in there, right? But the Beatles, the Apple, definitely part of the code as well. They tell us enough. I noticed you got a Beatles t-shirt on there today.
Yep, yep. Yes, sir.
Can't fault you. So
let's see.
Maybe I stopped sharing screen for a moment. So yeah, and pass you loads of them hieroglyphicums and them emblematas. Just just tells you everything you need to know about this place, honestly, and the reset. So just any questions you'd like to ask us? There's a lot of people in chat, just over 1,000 in chat. Anybody? Yeah, don't worry about SpaceX, and we don't actually discuss like NASA things or anything like that because they're not a reality. It'd be like discussing a NASA, a Disney movie, like it's real, which we don't do. So, yellow submarine. I don't think it's yellow anymore. If you look into, you'll find out the yellow submarine is now an orange submarine. But yeah, loads of clues in that because they got two different sets of beetles, haven't they, in the yellow submarine? Almost like there's a different reality going on. You have the, do you ever look into the two different sets of beetles or more even?
I have never really looked into it, but I mean, I do believe that phenomenon exists because a buddy of mine showed me about, the clone. I've never really paid attention to the cloning and all the modern politicians.
Well,
and
it's not part of my narrative.
Switched out. I never really cared. It doesn't really have a lot to do with my channel, but it was really interesting to see 5 or 6 different pictures of President Joe Biden back when he was a senator. And each picture is a blow up of his ears. And his ears are absolutely, you got 2 different types of ears. The kind where the lower lobe goes straight into the skin and there's no indentation. And then the kind that indents like mine. You know what I mean? There's a rise in the ear and there's like an indentation. Well, all of his are like mine. They indent. But the Joe Biden that's on the news every day right now, his lower earlobes go straight down. There's no indention whatsoever.
It's not the same dude.
It's not the same guy. Even his eyes look different. I was like, wow. And until I saw all the pictures all in front of me, my buddy showed it to me on his phone. He says, look, here's Joe Biden in the 70s. Here he is in the 90s. Here he is in 2018. I'm like, wow, okay. That's all the same guy, and it's all the same ear. Now, here he is today. Totally different guy. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Wow, man! I think you just Mandela'd me, dude."
Oh man, I think they're all actors, aren't they? And it's just this world stage for everybody else. I don't believe anything, hardly any of it is real. Charles Manson. Yeah, when you Google him and look at his videos, he's got like a swastika on one, he's got a cross on another, he's got nothing on another. It's like, hang on, how many Charlies are there?
Yeah,
it's just they're all just actors.
Yeah, he died now. I believe he recently died, didn't he?
I thought he was going to get married at 78, and I thought, go on, get in there, Charles. But I thought, but no, he's dead, is he?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I know they say he wired all that up, but I mean, he spent his whole life in prison, and
Never did
he
anything
never
wrong.
killed anybody.
No.
Now, he might have wired it all up. I don't know. I wasn't there. I just know that when it comes to murdering high-profile people, they always have a patsy. So I don't know.
Yeah, but the whole thing is it's BS, because the whole
Yeah.
narrative has just happened in the same time as the moon landings. You've got Mia Farrow, who's just coincidentally going out. She's filming like Rosemary's Baby about the birth of the devil, and her husband or boyfriend at the time is Roman Polanski, whose house it is, or her ex, and he's living with Sharon Tate. And it's like, hang on a minute, you can't even make this up.
Yeah,
this is real, you know. So, yeah, it's craziness. I think it was just to end the hippie era, and which it did, because people were frowning upon hippies on buses, like they were after, a certain event happened. Everybody was frowning at anyone with like slightly brown skin. I even had it myself, it's like, are you going to blow up on the bus? It's like, no, you're all right. I'm British, but everyone goes a bit strange, don't they, with all of these agendas?
Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah, I don't buy into any of this, and I do not think that we are in the real world anymore. Personally, I think that, or were we ever? I really do feel that it's not the same realm as before. I think they've given it away. It's a copy, but like I think many of us are spotting it. That it's not the same one.
Yeah, it's definitely unusual. I know that one of the largest problems in the archaeological field is because modern day scientists always basically import modern day perspectives and try to overlay it on ancient phenomena. So let me give you an example. In order to study how technolithically precise the Great Pyramid is in Egypt, they use modern frames of reference, and they try to impose a false paradigm of a bunch of sandal wearing, white cotton robe wearing people in the thousands moving blocks that are 5 tons
up ramps,
and sometimes 70 tons, and using the technology that was believed to be at the time, like you said, log rollers and stone rollers and lamps. Well, even the ramp theory, to build the ramps necessary to build the Great Pyramid and deliver the materials to the elevations they needed to be, there's more mass in the ramps than there are in the Great Pyramid.
Yeah, right. So, they would have to be a mile that way or something.
Right. But in order to promote that idea, they have to ignore the fact of what other authors have found, like Christopher Dunn. And in 1901, 1902, and 1903, Sir Flinders Petrie found evidence that he could not describe. And he openly admitted what he found. He explained what he found, but he also said he does not know what species of technology would have been required to do this because we don't have anything. But he found the evidence of fracture quarrying, which is absolutely a machine that can quarry a block from the live quarry, living rock.
Yes.
And excavate the block to the dimensions it was needed, so that the block isn't removed and then work has to be done on the block.
Yeah, right. You don't face it.
Taken out the quarry exactly the way it needed and the dimension. And it would have required computer technology to do that, to understand how to change, because the blocks in the Great Pyramid, contrary to popular belief, you could not have taken 2.5 million blocks and built the Great Pyramid if all the blocks were the same size, because the levels themselves differ in height. And the reason they did that was to make it earthquake proof. Yes. And because the physics constants are incorporated mathematically into the varying levels going up to the Great Pyramid. Yeah. Every physics constant that we know of has been found in multiple different dimensions in the measurements of the interior and exterior of the Great Pyramid. The value that I brought to that was basically admitting on my channel multiple times in my published books that I don't care about all the physics constants. I don't care about all the relationships of the moon and luminaries and the sun and all the geographic. None of that means anything to me, because all that does is tell me that the Great Pyramid was designed as a lithic template. It was something that something else needed in order for it to work. And what I have discovered is that all those rectilinear measurements all are divisible by 138. And I have shown on my channel over and over and over and over in multiple charts and graphs, and so many people have verified it. They've gone through it using only Sir Flinders Petrie's measurements, which are scientifically accepted today, which are also the very measurements that the Egyptologists use when they're smashing everybody else's theories. These are the only measurements I use, and they show the Phoenix phenomenon in multiple dimensions of arithmetic. 138 is the message of the pyramid. It's everywhere in it. I have so many videos about it. I have not had one single detractor. Not one person has ever come out and ever did a video or a presentation trying to show otherwise.
Right.
And that would be a fool to, because I would embarrass them after that. There is so much data on
Overwhelming.
the 138-year sequencing that's found in this monument. So Zawi Hawass is familiar with my research. We have a mutual friend. He is the president of the American Institute for Pyramid Research, and he sees Zawi multiple times a year. He's always traveling to Egypt and all that. But Zawi Hawass is not about the truth. To me, he is an intelligence operative, and he is a gatekeeper controlling the narrative about.
He's literally got the keys for the gates. The go into Giza Plateau. The guy is the key holder.
Yeah, I was upset about about 5 months ago. About 5 months ago, I released a video, and what's interesting is, Martin, I had only heard about you. I'd never watched any of your videos until Cheryl Bailey turned me on to your research. So I'm watching your videos, and I couldn't believe that somebody had said that you had coined the term Antiquitech.
Yeah,
well, 5 months ago, I used that term, not knowing where it came from. But I have a video called Antiquitech of the Great Pyramid, and the subtitle is The Hidden Entrance to the Great Pyramid of Egypt. So in that video, I show a 100-year-old diagram that shows the original entrance to the Great Pyramid, its location, and how it's even with the bottom of the Grand Gallery and the floor of the Queen's Chamber. And
I know the one. They tried to dynamite themselves in there, didn't they?
Yes, and then no one mentions my channel. No one mentions Jason of Archaics. When 5 months ago I said, this is here, it's been there. Look at this picture here. This picture was taken in the 70s. Look at all the concrete that's now over this area, which isn't in any of the older pictures. Now look at this picture. 10 years later, someone put 3 carefully placed blocks, Great Pyramid blocks, in front of that area, in front of the concrete. Over the years, the entrance area has been covered, and everybody's attention has been directed to the little black hole underneath it, where everybody has to crawl in to get into the descending passage. In the descending passage. And for the past, since 820 AD, when Al-Mamun discovered the entrance to the Great Pyramid by accident, since 820, that's the only entrance anybody has ever known, except for 100 years ago, somebody published where the original entrance was, and using nothing but arithmetic and using nothing but the scientific measurements of Sir Flinders Petrie and counting up, I found that, okay, that's exactly the 24th course of bricks. So I went across the bay, and I found out that the floor of the Queen's Chamber is the 24th course of bricks. So the entrance to the Great Pyramid was self-referencing. It's right here. It's at the chevrons. Those big old portals that they had. It's at the chevron. So in my video, I'm showing, hey guys, 100 years ago, somebody knew where the original entrance was. Here it is. If they look in that area, they'll find it. 5 months later, they do a huge international televised deal where they're talking about, we discovered the entrance of the Great Pyramid.
I watched.
We sent a camera in there. We did all this. Yeah, they didn't discover it. It's been known for a very long period of time.
Agreed.
They just didn't tell the public.
No, I've got pictures from 1733 showing a side entrance to the Great Pyramid of Giza. Were you aware? The Queen's Chamber? Were you aware that apparently when they discovered it, there was supposed to be an inch of salt on the surface, on the floor of that chamber?
But listen, that doesn't surprise me, because up to the Queen's Chamber is only the 24th course. There's 203 levels of blocks that go all the way up to the top.
King's Chamber, but it's a resonation chamber. They say you can hear it sing. They say that you can hear it like harmonically sing.
I don't doubt that. But those salt crystals were removed intentionally, and the reason is because when the Great Pyramid was halfway submerged underwater, it was under the Mediterranean for 340 years. And I document where you can find all this data on my channel. And the ancients, the oldest depictions of the Great Pyramid all show just two mountains sticking out of water. The third pyramid was underwater.
Yeah, it shows it shorter. Yeah.
No one even saw it. So it was two holy mountains that were accessible only by ship. But you couldn't climb them because the 51-degree angle was covered in mirror smooth white casing limestone blocks, which are mentioned by Herodotus of Halicarnassus.
Yeah, indeed.
They're mentioned
Herodotus, that's where I got that.
They're mentioned by Diodorus Siculus. They're mentioned by Ammianus Marcellinus. They're mentioned by everybody all the way up to the days of Al-Mamun. Al-Mamun mentioned them as well, and he's the one that discovered the king's chamber. He's the one that discovered all that. But after that, sometime during the Dark Ages, all references to the Great Pyramid ceased until Al-Biruni, the geographer, went to Egypt and drew pictures and looked and saw the ocean level was stained brown on the Great Pyramid. And he published that. It's in his book today, Wonders of Ancient Nations by Al-Biruni. It's 1,000 years old. Now, after Al-Biruni, several other, like Al-Makrizi, Rasu, they all mentioned that the Great Pyramid was covered in casing blocks, and some mentioned that it was underwater and that had to have been pre-flood. And the reason why the Great Pyramid complex was before the Great Flood was because no history books after the Great Flood ever mentioned it, and the Egyptians themselves had no idea where the Sphinx had come from. So the and the original idea for the Sphinx, according to the ancient Egyptians, was not the lion.
That was an African American woman.
That was due to the patriarchal takeover. The original sphinxes in Egypt were Anubis. They were a dog. And there are people today who have done an analysis on the hindquarters and on the tail, and they say there's no way that that's a feline. That those are the dog hindquarters and tail. And they show the different deals. Say, evidently, the reason why the face and head of the Sphinx today with the headdress is at 1/3 proportionality to the body. And anybody can verify that. You can go on Google aerial view of the Sphinx, and you will see a tiny disproportionate head overlaid a large body. Nothing in nature looks like that.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
The head is for everything to be so anatomically precise in ancient Egypt, on the reliefs,
and then all of a sudden this abomination.
Then you have a 240-foot long statue that's 66 feet high.
I don't think it's anything to do with the pyramids.
What they did is they chiseled the dog face away into a human face, and they left the excess stone that was a part of the dog neck. They turned that into the Egyptian headdress. This was from you got to understand, when we talk about Egypt, there were two Egypts through all of Egyptian history. There were two Egypts. The Egypt that's in the far south is the Kemet. It's the original Cometian civilization. And they were dark red skinned, and they had a lot of interaction with the Nubians and the Ethiopians, but there are no pyramids in Upper Egypt.
Right.
None. All the pyramids are in Lower Egypt around the Great Pyramid in Saqqara. There are no they buried pharaohs in Deep Egypt, which is called Upper Egypt. They buried the pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings. This is where they put them in Lower Egypt, which is right there on the coast of the Mediterranean by the Nine Bows, where the Nile River empties out into the Mediterranean.
Sure, the Nile Delta.
That's the Delta. That's the area of Goshen. That's where the ancient Israelites, the Amorites, were dwelling. That area of Egypt, of On and Anu and Heliopolis, Memphis, the Giza Plateau, that was always cosmopolitan. It was always multicultural, and it was always the ruling families of the Near East always had a ruling family there as well. This is why you find in Egyptian records that anytime Pharaoh needed a daughter or a son, they always contacted Mitanni, which is the Amorite kingdom, or they contacted Hattusis, which was the Hittites.
Yes, the Hittites.
Culturally, the Egyptians were the enemies of the Amorites and the enemies of the Hittites. But the ruling dynastic families only intermarried through the Amorites and the Hittites. It's the same thing the elite do to us today.
Yeah.
It is the illusion of countries being at war to promote economy, to promote strife, and to maintain control. But the real reality is all the rulers of the world are blood related. Every one of them.
They're all family. You know, even Bush was his Queen of England's cousin, George Bush.
Yeah, they're all family.
They're all
Well,
family.
what we find in the cuneiform text and the hieroglyphic text about the exchanges of princes and princesses with the other ruling families of the ancient world involved with Egypt is the exact same thing we find in the world today. They're all related.
Yeah. So about the pyramids themselves, how have you got any ideas how they would have managed such a feat of putting these million blocks together in a different environment?
This is where we cross over into some real problems, because we're talking about a structure that's 203 levels of stone, and you have to understand every single plane of stone, the first level, second level, third level, fourth level, every single level had to have been tolerance perfect even to put the next level on.
Mind blowing.
To go all the way to the top, 203 levels is 454 feet high in the sky. It's gigantic. Wow. It's huge. It's 756 feet wide on all four corners. Wow. It's amazing. So,
do you know how many sides there are on the Sphinx? Excuse me, on the Great Pyramid of Giza. Do you know how many sides there are actually on it?
Okay, listen. I don't want to confuse people. Okay. Optically, it's four-sided.
It is.
But
from above?
Architecturally, it's eight-sided.
It's 8 sides.
And it's only because the actual engineers were wanting to show us a clue.
And how did they pull that off? Where they could just slightly incline it to give it that.
This structure was not just thrown together, because we probably couldn't replicate this feature to the mathematical degree that they did.
No way.
You cannot see it with the naked eye, but you can see it on photography when you show the negatives and you blow them up, and you're looking at the shadows of the sun along the sides.
Yeah,
that's when you can detect it. So we're still dealing with a four-sided structure. We're still dealing with a four-sided structure. It's just that those four sides do have an inclination toward their centers. So,
indeed,
it's actually amazing.
It's amazing. blows my mind. Blows my mind.
So what you're seeing a lot of on Google, when you Google that eight-sided pyramid deal, what you're looking at is computer-generated accentuation, because the naked eye really can't see it. So somebody's using a computer to make it look more eight-sided. That's what you're seeing. But actually, in reality, the human eye cannot detect that variation. But it's there, showing that something other than human engineering did this. It was human engineering employing a technology. The fracture coring is a great clue. Another great clue is the technolithic precision. And what I mean by that is the Great Pyramid was built using tolerances that are far in excess of what is needed for a perfect structure. To get a perfect structure, you need 0.25% tolerance. The tolerance can be flat, like the marble on a bank building. But whoever built the Great Pyramid went even flatter than that, and it's not necessary. So what it means is their technology was actually superior to the very structure they were making.
That's mind-blowing.
I believe, and I have a video about it, but I believe 600 people using machines built the Great Pyramid in 90 years. And I lay out all my evidence for that, why I believe that. So it's not even a lot of blocks per day. There's 365 days a year. Well, back then it was 360 days a year. And then you multiply that by 90 and you're only doing a few blocks a day. It would have been an easy feat if machines are doing all the transporting, machines are setting them in place. And if all the machines are hive-minded, being controlled by the same control panel.
And big 3D printing operation.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is.
I think they're doing it with all of antiquity. You know, some of these Gothic cathedral creations, I just can't imagine how the mind
temples in Southeast Asia.
As well.
Yeah, the
intricacy.
Yeah, you see all these statues and people. It's like, how the hell did they do this? It's amazing. So
3D printed.
David Hatcher Childress in his books, Lost Cities books,
Yeah, I know that.
he shows ancient Olmec reliefs, and it's a clue as to what was happening. He shows that there was a war in the Central America,
Central America, yeah, the Olmecs.
and in that war, it looked like that there was a Negro population.
Yeah, well, the Olmec heads are African, aren't they?
Yes, but there's more to that story. There's a lot
Oh.
more to that story. So there was an Olmec civilization that was in Veracruz State, Oaxaca, and all that.
Okay.
Among that civilization was a black population. I'm not saying they were from Africa, but they're in the text and they're in the reliefs. But something happened. And what's interesting is that an extreme minority were Caucasians with long beards who wore helmets and backpacks and used a device to shape buildings in stone. And they're in the reliefs.
Whoa.
But something happened, and this civilization that was the Olmecs collapsed and was gone. And the native black population took over. When they took over, there was all these giant spheres that are related to, like, I can't pronounce it. I don't even know. You probably know. It's the piezoelectric
Piezoelectric forces.
Okay, yes, okay. These stones, according to David Hatcher Childress and the research that he's put together, it's these giant spheres are mathematically perfect. They don't know how they did. It couldn't have been done with a chisel. They were done mathematically perfect spheres of all different sizes, but they had a very distinctive feature. And that feature was because they're all with a very high crystalline content, that right before an earthquake occurs, the earth releases this seismic energy before the actual world starts shaking and all that.
Yeah.
It gives you about 20 minutes to prepare.
Yeah, bells will ring.
So yes, bells will ring and all that. So this is what the ancient Olmecs had. They built these spheres in an earthquake-prone area all throughout Central America, in Veracruz State, in the Yucatan. So they built the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. They built all these cities that are fantastic with pyramids and all that, but they put these stone spheres in strategic locations in public areas, and the people always had time to go into the grass courts. They would get out of all the stone buildings. They had about 15 to 20 minutes when the stones began singing. So as soon as all the stones start singing, they can run to the courts and save themselves, because stone buildings collapse. So this went on for like 1,000 years of history, and they perfected these stone balls. Well, then the black population took over. It might have been a cataclysm, whatever. And the first thing that they did was run out the indigenous local Olmecs. They ran them out or killed them or enslaved them or whatever, but they enslaved the Caucasians that are wearing these backpacks and all that, and they started forcing them to build for them. And this is where the angry faces come from, because there's only a few that have been found. You got to understand, 10,000 of these spheres have been found all through Central America.
Yeah, I see this all in Mesoamerica.
There's only a dozen of these faces, and these faces were made out of those pre-existing spheres that were already there. And the reason why only a dozen of these faces have ever been found is because, according to the reliefs that David Hatcher Childress shows, it didn't take hardly any time before other Native American cultures came to war against that black population who had taken over the Olmec cities. They came to war, and the reliefs are very specific. Those reliefs show chopped up bodies of Negro people and chopped up bodies of the helmet backpack wearing bearded Caucasians.
Yeah, got you. Yeah. Wow.
Because when the natives came back in, they did not discriminate. They killed everybody and took those cities back over. So this is the story. This is the story of those heads. This is what really happened. This is why there's over 10,000 of these spheres that have been found all through these earthquake-prone districts, because they gave the people warning. And this is why less than a dozen of these faces have ever been found. They didn't have time to sculpt them all before they got butchered themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting history, and the time period I'm talking about right now is about 1135 BC to 900 BC. This is when this excuse me, I'm sorry. That's when the Olmecs settled Veracruz state. The
Gotcha.
time period of the great butchery and this war and this whole collapse happened in 31 BC. 31 BC is one of the worst Phoenix phenomenon episodes for the Americas that ever happened. It collapsed almost everything in the Americas. The Phoenix phenomenon appeared over Egypt in 31 BC and was recorded to look like a great red dragon. 31 BC was during the Battle of Actium, when one of the worst earthquakes ever to destroy Jerusalem happened. Several Greek cities and temples suffered from earthquakes in 31 BC. All these events happened in the month of May. They're attached to the Phoenix phenomenon, but it was recorded widely in many texts. I've got them on my channel, all the citations in Europe, Asia, Africa. But the worst destruction was the Americas.
Wow. Is this a Santorini event cited around that time as well, isn't it?
Well, the Santorini affair happened in 1447 BC. It's when the island of Thera, the volcano Santorini,
Yeah, sure. The
on the
Knossos
island
Empire.
of Thera,
Boom.
it just detonated. And it detonated and completely 100% ended the Minoan Empire.
No doubt about it. Is it just, and it refaced that bit of the Mediterranean? Some have cited
here, check this out. The real interesting thing about that, Martin, is that volcano eruption ended those who ruled the Mediterranean shipping guilds, and this was the Minoans. Now, as soon as they were gone, it left a power vacuum. That power vacuum led to the greatest series of events we know in history, and that is the Mycenaean Empire tried to fill the vacuum, and the only way that they could maintain their power was to attack Ilium, where the capital city of Troy was. But Troy was supported by the Hittite Empire.
Oh, and they're superior horsemen and
all that. So while all this is going on,
the
Philistines and the Phoenicians suddenly appear in ships, and the Egyptians document them for the first time. Who the hell are these people? And then Sardinia is taken over, Corsica is taken over, southern Italy is taken over, and now all these strangers are appearing, and they're bringing these different types of animals that no one had ever seen before, different types of ships. This is the Sea Peoples Federation. They enter the fray, and this begins the 10 years of the Trojan War. This begins the fall of Troy.
Yeah.
And as soon as Troy fell, these strangers, these Sea Peoples, went through the Dardanelles. Now that Troy couldn't block the passage, they went into the Black Sea, and they ended the Hittite Empire. They ended the Hittites have never been seen since. 400 years later, the people of the Hittite Empire resurrected as the new Phrygian and the Lydian people. But the Hittites were gone. And this terrified the Egyptians, because the Egyptians saw how easily these Sea Peoples had done that. So the Sea Peoples attacked Egypt twice.
Yes,
and,
I'm aware.
Twice. The whole period of the judges in the Old Testament involving the Philistines is an oversimplification of what really happened, because that's when the Philistines first appeared in that area, and they built the Pentapolis at Gaza and Ashkelon being the two chief cities. And this is in the Egyptian hieroglyphic records, how the Sea Peoples came in, and they identified them, and the Egyptians called the Sea Peoples the Philistines. And all the evidence points that these strange people who came with strange animals the Egyptian had never seen, which is unusual, because the Egyptians at that time had seen all the animals of Europe from trade.
True. It's not far from Europe.
They'd seen all the African animals, because the Ethiopians and Nubians traded with the Egyptians. They had seen all the animals from Asia as far as the Himalayas. So there was trade with the old Elamite power structure. So the only areas of the world that would have baffled the Egyptians to say that these foreigners had brought new and strange animals, there's only 3 places in the ancient world where that could be true. One is Australia, one is Southeast Asia, those are all different animals, and the other actually comports with the entire narrative we have about Atlantis. And that is, the Atlanteans came from the Americas. The Atlanteans were at war with the Greeks, and that's exactly what we find in the Trojan War.
Yes.
And the Egyptians were the ones that documented the invasion of the Sea Peoples Federations. And 1,000 years later, it was Plato that recorded this whole narrative.
Sure.
But a lot of the details were kind of wrong. I just recently did a video.
Well, I watched a bit of it. I was interested, you know,
on breaking down Atlantis and showing that,
you know, out of the gates of Colossus, and then you know,
none of that,
some say
could have
Bimini,
happened.
some say, you know, there's. But I think, you know, there's so many cited, especially the classics and Plato, that I think that it was safe to presume that it was in the mid-Atlantic somewhere, the Azores area, maybe.
Yeah, Atlantis could have been the Azores, but there could be landmass that's not there. The only thing we have to really go by is the fact is that many people have tried to locate Atlantis in all kinds of different parts of the world that do not qualify, because the actual narrative says it was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which is
the Straits of Gibraltar. Yeah,
it was beyond that, and it was in the Atlantic. Therefore, this would have been a series of islands or islands that aren't there no more. It could very well be the area that we know of today called the Sargasso Sea.
Saragossa.
The Sargasso Sea is an anomaly. It's the only one in the world.
Dardanelles. No, nothing moves there. It's just still. There's no wind.
Not only is it a doldrum, but it's like hundreds of square miles where kelp and seaweed. It has a whole ecosystem. Whole ecosystem that sits there, and it gets so thick sometimes. Now today we have motorized vessels, but in the 16th, 17th century, they had to go around the Sargasso Sea because too many ships would get stuck in it and they couldn't get out. So that's how thick
stuck in the doldrums.
Yep, got stuck. So that could actually be the evidence of a buried land surface, a land surface that went down like Davis Island went down. Davis Island is only one of 20 or 30 different documented islands that have been populated.
Oh, I've got a book called basically it's an atlas of unknown islands. There's that's
awesome.
I got two of them, the Golden Atlas and anyway, they're beautiful books. But it covers David's Island, High Brazil, which was apparently they didn't give you the longitude and latitude of where this location was.
Wow.
The High Brazil, Friesland, that seems to have gone missing, and so many land masses that are on old maps that are no longer here. And America as well, completely different, only 400 years ago. Island, California, huge lake where Oregon's supposed to be.
Yes, where Death Valley is, it was all water. Yeah, I agree.
Sorry.
I agree. So returning back,
lost my volume.
Returning back to the Great Pyramid, you okay? You all right? Yeah, no volume. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Hey, you guys say in the chat section if you can hear me or if you can hear him. Can't hear you, Martin.
That's weird.
There you
I
go.
thought everyone could hear me.
There you go.
Yeah?
I can hear you now.
Oh, yeah. That's weird. Anyway, another glitch in the Matrix. That's not.
Oh man, that's a story of my life.
Yeah, man. It's changing daily as well. I just can't keep up with it, really. I'm always stopping to try and catch up with myself.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Hey, so Martin, let's return to the Antiquitech. So when it comes to the Great Pyramid, the problem we have in assessing the data is that we have to be very careful not to impose modern day understandings of infrastructure and technology and impose that on a world that was fundamentally different than the one we live in now. And what I mean is during the building of the Great Pyramid, there was a vapor canopy intact. And this vapor canopy was a very unique environment and is very well documented and recorded. Not only was the daytime a dark purple light where the sun could not be seen as an object in the sky. All you could see was an area of the sky that was a little bit more well lit than the rest of the sky. And further away from that well lit area that moved across the sky, it got darker and darker and darker purple. So, but it was just the opposite at night. At nighttime, the vapor canopy spread out. It condensated. And this is why Genesis says that every morning and every evening, the world was watered by a dew. but there was no rain in that world. And that's exactly what we find with the vapor canopy traditions in the Native American legends. They talk about the dark midnight, and old Native American Indian traditions go into detail about the dark purple light period during the reign of Spider Grandmother, during the time when humans were at war with giants. These are all in the Native American tradition.
Yeah, Zulus too. They have a narrative of this superior world. You know,
so this during this dark purple light period, people built cities not to fight each other, but they built walls and special buildings where they could run along the roofs and never touch the ground. And the buildings were connected like Catalhoyuk. The entire city is accessible by rooftops, rooftop bridges, and
man, so what, they're leaping around, aren't they, like flying?
Well, they're trying to stay off the ground because insects grew to astonishing sizes during the vapor canopy. So you're talking about spiders and ants and roaches that are now a problem. They grow to in the vapor canopy, which had increased atmospheric pressure. Over 100 times more oxygen was inhaled in one breath during the vapor canopy. The trees grew to 400, 500, and 600 feet height and were much bigger around. Flora and fauna grew to what we are told is prehistoric flora and fauna, but it's not true. It was during recent human. We're talking about 4,000 and 5,000 years ago. It wasn't millions of years ago. It was very recent. So this world at nighttime changed because the daytime was dark and very humid. Nighttime was just the opposite. At nighttime, the whole vapor canopy cleared to the point to where the water droplets in the mesosphere became a magnifying glass. This is why all the ancient traditions around the world, people claim that they could reach up and almost touch the stars. And the moon filled the sky and it provided the daylight. It was just the opposite during this world.
I can almost see it, Jason. You just painted such a picture for me.
This is why we have in the archaeological record many photosynthetic type creatures and plants that are no longer inhabiting our world. We had plants that glowed in the dark. We had animals that glowed in the dark, and we had a whole different type of creature called a marsupial that thrived in these conditions. The marsupials have almost been wiped out and have been basically secluded to the very southern parts of the world, like New Zealand and Australia and all those chains of islands. But they've been virtually wiped out everywhere else in the world except for one very resilient marsupial that's found everywhere, and that's the opossum. But this world, this atmospheric pressure would have required different types of technologies that would have worked in different ways. And we're probably looking at a technology that probably worked during one part of the day much superior than it would have worked during another part of the day. So I don't know what it is. I'm not going to try and pretend, but whatever it was, it used computer equipment, because this is a core fundamental of the old cuneiform text. This is the reason why hundreds of thousands of clay tablets have been found with cuneiform, with Sumerian cuneiform, Akkadian cuneiform, Elamite. We have Elamite, Assyrian, Babylonian. These are all different types of styles of cuneiform. Rashamric, Ugaritic, Canaanite, Amarna. We have all these different types for. This is where the idea came from, to record knowledge on clay tablets. The reason is because in the vapor canopy world, we were technologically advanced. We used computers, we used holographic technology, we used machines. The very fact that machines were around at that time is proven with the tracks that are found petrified across Texas. Also, Malta has those tracks. The very fact that we have the technolithic precision of monuments in South America at Pumapunka, Tiahuanaco, around Lake Titicaca, all of the Giza monuments that were originally technologically
so precise,
far beyond what is technologically necessary to build. So a technology was employed, but the reason why we have those tablets is because the ancients saw their betters using tablets. And those betters are recorded in the historical record as the Anuna. When the Anuna appeared after a reset, after a cataclysm, this is the one thing that identified them as different than other people, except for their beards and their height. Because on all the Babylonian reliefs that you see that depict what the Anunnaki actually looked like, there were very tall humans with long beards. And they carried these little handbags where they had these tablets.
And they had the tablet. I know.
So after another reset, after another great cataclysm that we know of as the day the sky fell.
Oh my God, I got the book. I got the book.
Day the sky. Is that Rand?
In my room.
Is that Rand? You're talking about Rand Flemmath?
Yeah, man, I got the book.
Okay, look,
it's on my table.
The day the sky fell is the day that the Bible calls the Great Flood. Because when the vapor canopy collapsed, it probably took about 40 days for all that liquid to hit the ground. The mesosphere emptied. Even science today will tell you, anybody can Google this, the mesosphere is up there now. It's very thick. But today, it only has small, tiny, infinitely small water droplets suspended in halo. But at one time, it was an ocean above. And this is why Genesis describes that the rainbow had never been seen until after the Great Flood. It couldn't have been seen because the vapor canopy would have blocked all that light diffraction. It would have never happened. So after the vapor canopy collapses and the world gets flooded, where the religionists went wrong was the ancient scribes of Babylon claimed that the whole world got flooded and only a few people survived.
Disagree.
That's not true. The whole world experienced flooding, but there were still caves and mountains that there were survivors all over the world. So that's all. That's the main difference. And now here's what's really, really interesting. You can't make this stuff up. I have shown by so many different mathematical perspectives, all the different ancient texts. I've shown on my calculator for my own viewers on my channel that the day this happened was in the month of May in the year 2239. And I show this completely independent of my Phoenix research. All these methods to show that it happened at this date are totally independent. And I've got like 8 different ways to show this. However, May 2039 is on the 138-year Phoenix phenomenon timeline, and I can never change it. Once I published it, there's no way to change it. It's been that same since I published it in 2006. That's the way it's remained, and nothing's changed. And it's amazing.
That is amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing because when you read the Midrashic text and the Talmudic text, it goes even more detail about what happened in the flood. When you read Immanuel Velikovsky and you see the you see what caused the flood was the appearance of a red star in the sky that later took on the appearance of wings, then turned into a great fiery dragon in the sky, and then all hell broke loose. And for 7 days, the world was dark. And during that darkness, the sky fell, and the races of the giants were wiped out. Not necessarily because of the flooding. There were human survivors, and there were also Nephilim giant survivors.
I would say
the real reason the giants and titans were wiped out was the same reason the megafauna are no longer existing, because they were alive too. And that reason is creatures that size require 10 times more oxygen. After the vapor canopy collapsed, nobody could breathe all that oxygen anymore. It's like it is today. So the atmospheric pressure plummeted. People weren't growing to astonishing sizes. Now the ground wasn't nitrogen rich anymore, so you didn't have fauna growing to astonishing sizes. And the ambient radiation that filtered through the vapor canopy is what caused plants to grow to heroic sizes, just like a hydroponics lab right now. You can make plants grow way better with dark light than you can sunlight. Sunlight does more damage, and dark light doesn't do any damage. Dark people, I know guys right now that use dark light to grow all kinds of interesting things. So, and they grow it good. So this is the world that the Great Pyramid was built under. So trying to identify the actual technology that was employed may be impossible until I believe this vapor canopy is coming back, because it's very easy. It's almost come back twice in human recorded history. One was in 1687 BC at the old Gygaean deluge, and the other one was in 522 AD, and that's the calendar we're under today, called the Anno Domini calendar. The Anno Domini calendar was specifically created by the Catholic Church to cover up the Great Phoenix Reset of 522 AD. I have a whole series of videos that talks about this. The evidence is damning. There's 100% proofs that Phoenix reset the entire world in 522, and that our present calendar, Anno Domini, doesn't actually document the birth of Christ. That's the cover story. I showed the actual documents that talk about why they created, why they wanted, because they specifically needed to hide what was called the Phoenix cycle. And this is published in old books. So, and the Phoenix cycle was 552 years, and the Phoenix cycle was exactly 522 AD. Because remember, I told you 31 BC was the great destruction of the Americas, but it was documented during the Battle of Actium as well. Well, 31 BC plus 552 years, which is a Phoenix cycle, is exactly 522 AD.
Trippy.
This was the next great destruction of our world. And the Roman Catholic Church basically took power as soon as that destruction happened. And we entered the Dark Ages because of a Phoenix reset. And then the Catholic Church kept knowledge from the people and continued the Dark Ages as long as they could until the Renaissance period began. And by that time, the elite were concealing their knowledge of the Phoenix in metaphor, in mysticism, and in alchemical treatises.
Encoded in art.
Yep.
Encoded in art and alchemy. Yeah, just definitely. Well, you just blow my mind, Jason. Just let my mind catch up with all that.
Oh man, you know what? Hey, we ain't got to do it all. We ain't got to do it all in one video. I can always come back.
That would be that would be absolutely fantastic, Jason. You've been absolutely a wealth of knowledge. My mind is blown. I can't believe I'm actually talking to somebody who knows stuff that I can talk to.
Yeah, it's I'm impressed with the Antiquitech. And when I did my video, I didn't know you were the origin of that. So later on, I'll give you credit for it on my channel.
Oh, thanks. I'm in the Urban Dictionary. Me, I got a few changed words in reality.
Yeah, another word I use a lot because it applies to my research is technolithic.
That's a good one.
Technolithic is vapor canopy technology, and it was coined by a man named James O'Con. And I've cited him because I knew the source of that word. But when it comes to Antiquitech in the future, I will give a shout out, because I'm honest. I'm always citing my sources. I believe that's paramount to if you want to be taken seriously as a researcher, you have always got to acknowledge those who came before you in whatever they contributed.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for that. That is so true. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I just want to say to my peeps, I don't know how long you're going to be staying. It's just 2 hour mark now, Jason.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I know that went like about 15 seconds.
Wow, that was fast.
I know. But yeah, man, that's just Brian splatting. I couldn't agree more, but it makes so much sense as well. There was a recorded event as well around that time with the vitrification of forts in Scotland. There's like forts that are just turned to glass in Scotland. And well, you mentioned the Hittites, but the Indus Valley civilization.
Yes.
Completely melted.
Right. Hey, well, listen, I can comment on that too. All right.
Oh.
So the calendars of the ancient world and today, when we actually analyze the events of those calendars, there are cross-calendrical parallels that defy explanation, showing that the programming is fixed. Let me give you an example.
Yes.
The year 1849 BC is the exact year that the Harappan Mohenjo-Daro civilization, Sumer, Akkad, and Sodom and Gomorrah were wiped off the map by some weird aerial phenomena that was like a sky tornado of fire. That's how it's described. Zechariah Sitchin actually does a very good job in his translations of the lamentation text of Akkad. And it shows that in these texts, it's perfectly describing how this destruction, which has been interpreted by other researchers as being nuclear or atomic.
I read that with the stitching. I read that.
Now, I don't know, and I'm not going to claim.
Well, that was the narrative for the Indus Valley, is there's radiation present as well.
Well, the reason is because in the 1960s and in the 1970s, a Russian expedition, a scientific expedition, was doing excavations at Mohenjo-Daro and Liedtke and Harappa, and they had found that the human skeletons and even domestic animals
hadn't been eaten by animals.
They hadn't been eaten by anything.
And in Harappa, everyone was just, what is going on with that then, Jason?
Check this out. I'm about to describe it to you, because when that destruction happened, it was the exact same time that Sodom and Gomorrah in the Old Testament were wiped off the map. It was the exact same time that the Sumerian culture ended, and this gave rise to the rise of Babylon. This is why Sargon of Akkad instantly rose to power as the king of Babylon, because the old Sumerian power structure had been incinerated from something from the sky. Now, whatever it was, humans were holding hands in the streets, so they got to visually see what was coming before it happened. The crowds of people were holding hands in the city of Mohenjo-Daro in where is it, Pakistan or India? It's in that area.
It's in northern India, now it's south central
Pakistan.
Well,
the Russian scientists not only found that many of the people were holding hands and they were all looking in the same direction when their bodies collapsed, and that no animals had eaten them. So the Sumerian texts say that this was the pestilential wind, and that soldiers had to dive into the rivers to save themselves because their skin and eyes were burning. So this is what's described in the Akkadian text. And a lot of soldiers died because the rivers boiled in some areas.
Oh, that sounds like electromagnetic weapons.
I don't know. I don't even want to theorize. I just know that when the Russians tested the area, you can see these skeletons. Hey, you can do a Google search for Russian expedition Mohenjo-Daro skeletons. It's going to pull these pictures up. It's crazy. And it's also going to pull up the actual scientific report that says that the Russians found that those skeletons at Mohenjo-Daro that were lying in the street are 50 times more radioactive than the skeletons after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So that's crazy. But the reason I'm telling you all this is because the dating is precise, and I show in my Chronicon how you get these dates very easily for the destruction. It's this whole stretch from India to Israel, from Sodom, the Black Sea, from Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim. The city of Bela was left untouched. But those four cities in it's crazy. A small community called Bela was in the center of destruction. It was completely untouched. Those people all survived. But Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim were wiped out. And so was all the Sumerian cities, and so was a great stretch across the Arabian desert, and so was all the way to Mohenjo-Daro, past the Elamite culture, and Liedtke, Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and about 20 other cities in the Harappan civilization, all wiped out and melted. They were all wiped out and melted. Some of the human skeletons are fused with the rock.
Yes,
at Mohenjo-Daro.
That was mind-blowing sight anyway.
Now here's what's crazy. This year was 1849 BC. That's of this Anno Domini calendar that was created because of a Phoenix reset. AC and BC calendar, the AD and BC calendar that we go by today, has its origin with the great Phoenix destruction of the world in 522, which led to the Justinian plagues and all that stuff.
Sure. I was going to mention that.
The whole period that Procopius documents, where the whole world was falling apart. That's what it documents. Well, this is in the holography. It's very interesting because 1849 BC, going backwards in time to this great destruction, is just the opposite as another calendar going forward in time.
Gotcha.
This calendar is called the Annus Mundi calendar, and it's the original biblical calendar showing that the pre-flood world was 1,656 days until the year 2239 BC, which means year 1 was 3895 BC. And according to Genesis 3895 BC, year 1 wasn't the creation at all. It was a renovation from a previous destruction. And I have whole videos that describe Genesis, what it's really teaching. That whole Adam and Eve story is actually about a world that was destroyed and rebuilt. Now, here's what's fascinating. On the Annus Mundi calendar, the year 1849 BC that all this destroyed is 2046 AM. This is a cross-calendrical parallel. I've documented about 100 of these. These cross-calendrical parallels actually give you a window into the future programming on a different time system. So on the Anno Domini calendar, the year 2046 AD is a future reflection of an ancient historical series of events that happened on the same year, but in a different calendar. 2046 AM was the destruction from the sky of all these cities. That's in 2046 AM, which is 1849 BC. Now, 2046 AD is the year Nostradamus indicates that after 2040, a second destruction will be far worse than the first. Nostradamus said that. It's his exact
word.
He
said that. I know he said that.
The second destruction will be far worse than the first.
I know. It's chilling.
Now, here's what's really interesting. Mother Shipton's prophecy. I have a video showing that Mother Shipton's prophecy, we can remove all the forged material that was inserted that was supposed to be for the 1800s and 19. There's a lot of forged material.
Yeah, stuff about motor cars and television.
All that was forged. That was put in there.
I agree.
To discredit her. Now, the actual Mother Shipton's prophecy is only about the last days in the end of the world. Her original prophecy started with 1926 and then moved forward. Everything prior to the 1926 reference in Mother Shipton is forged by other people. But her original prophecy was about the 2 sky dragons, and the 2 sky dragons are coming back to back. She said the first sky dragon will appear 1 century after the Great World War. This is World War II. 1 century after World War II began is 2040. She said almost immediately after that, the second sky dragon will come and be far worse. She doesn't say 2046, but Nostradamus does. In the date index of Nostradamus, he specifically identifies 2046 as a far worse destruction than what happens in 2040 with the Phoenix. So all this is documented in my published books and on my channel. It's just amazing. But the real icing on the cake here is that 1849 BC is also a cross-calendrical parallel to 1849 AD. Do you know what happened in 1849? Do you know what happened that's relative to all this?
I'm thinking 1849.
Let me explain it to you.
Crimean War.
Okay. You're thinking about socio-political events in time. I'm going to go deeper than that. This series of destructive events in 1849 BC with the destruction of Harappa, Sumer, Akkad, and Sodom and Gomorrah BC, that destructive events parallels 2046 Annus Mundi, which parallels 2046 AD, showing us a window of what's going to happen in 2046. But this is a cross-calendrical parallel, and if anything is true, it can be seen from multiple different mathematical vantage points. So we have to look at 1849 as well, not just 2046. Right. And when knowing that this was 1849 BC, then we look at 1849 AD, and what we find are the first excavations in the ancient Sumerian cities by which Sumer was discovered. Cuneiform was translated by George Smith, and a modern world got our first glimpses of Akkadian, Babylonian, Sumerian history, because prior to 1849 BC, we had not decoded any of this stuff. We didn't know what it was. Prior to 1849 BC, we had not even discovered all these underground libraries that were full of tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets. 1849 BC began modern archaeology of the ancient Near East that was destroyed in 1849 BC.
All written in stone.
It's all programming. This is a construct.
That got to prove it, though. Surely that's just beyond coincidence. You know? That's just like, you know, somebody's done that. That's coding. This is like, that just has to be a simulation.
Well, hey, once you can see the coding, you can see the cycles, the epicycles. You see, like, and through all these forward and backward timelines that overlap, and you can restart to study them, and you can paint a picture of the future. Through all of that is one single timeline, unbroken. It has a pulse every 138 years. Destruction edits, destruction edits, destruction edits, destruction edits. It's almost as if it's trying to either disrupt the ability of humans to see the pattern, or something else is trying to distract humans, and it's putting things back into perspective so we can discover them.
Well, we are discovering.
It's one or the other. It's got to be one or the other.
It's got to be one or the other. I wonder. You got me thinking now, because, you know, it's not, you know, this is not a fluke that so many people are waking up to this information and instinctively know that, you know, this reset, you know, cycle is true, because once you know, you know. But there must be a reason for this. You know, I keep thinking to myself, like, oh, you know, we're just ushering in a new paradigm, but a completely new world, nothing like the one we see around us now. That's what I think come in, which is a bit like the the canopy world, if you like, a bit like the Avatar movie, the giant trees.
Yeah, well, I mean, these things aren't really mysterious to me, because I mean, we have in the Book of Enoch, it says
one of my favorites,
in the last days knowledge shall be increased, which is reiterated in the book of the prophet Daniel in the Old Testament. It also says that at the end times knowledge will be increased. But we have, there's another famous one: Book of Enoch, Book of Daniel. And in the book of Second Esdras it says, in the last days stones shall speak. This is archaeology. This is these things aren't surprising to me. I believe that these things were meant to be known, but it doesn't even matter, Martin. If you and I woke up 1 million people to understand all this material and to grasp it and all that, it still would not affect the paradigm, because 1 million perspectives are still not enough to change the construct. The construct is fixed. It's fixed. We're here to learn, to grow, and to move on. But I believe that this is a program that is run multiple times, and you and I and people listening to our voices have probably run through it with us multiple times as well.
Yeah.
But true. I believe that myself, possibly you, and a lot of people listening to us now, and other people in the world that's never even heard of Martinliedtke or Jason. Listen, I believe that this is our final run through this program. We're ready to go. I believe that once you wake up to the fact that you're in a construct, the construct itself will graduate you.
Yes.
It's time to move you on to another one, man, because you already woke up here. And once something is awake, it cannot go back to sleep.
No. Yes, exactly that, Jason. On to the next level.
On to the next level.
Completed. Game completed. You did really, really well. Well done, you boys.
Yeah. I mean, I try to explain that to people, because I get a lot of emails and people in the comment section. They're worried about, hey man, how can I apply this knowledge? Or hey man, what does this mean to me? Or what can I do to spread this information? And I'm always telling people, one, you need to understand that the very act of waking up is your key to escape. It says you don't have to do anything but realize that you're an immortal being living through a temporal experience. And once you take on that perspective, every bit of this becomes a game. And the game itself has no problem with revealing more and more of its architecture to you. Once it realizes, oh, okay, you understand that I'm bullshit. You understand that this is all smoke and mirrors, and it will convey these things to you. You don't even have to search for them. They'll just start popping up in your existence
No
because
shit.
you're now vibrating on the frequency of the oversoul of the construct itself, and you're no longer subject to all the dungeon programming that keeps the collective fixed and enslaved. Once you're free of that, once you've woke up, you have done basically what is necessary, that when you die this time in your avatar, that you're going to move on. It's time to go. You actually become like a product liability, and you're no longer wanted here. So, yeah.
Yeah. Again, I couldn't agree with you more. You put things so beautifully, Jason. You're speaking my thoughts. That's exactly how I think about this realm, really.
Thank you.
You know, just try to be love, try to be, you know, just caring, and just like go with it. You know, I don't want to try not to overthink anything, if I can help it. And just enjoy my journey. I'm enjoying your journey. I'm enjoying everyone's journey. Ego's a bit of a shit. That seems to get in the way of a lot of stuff. I've noticed that.
That's just negative default programming.
Well, that's what I was just going to say.
We all have egos, and yeah, they do rise up from time to time.
Well, they're pretty transparent, but like with the negative, well, it's the system, isn't it? You know, when you break away from that, though, you definitely don't need any of that. That anymore, you know, just to be, I'm just happy just to be grateful to be alive in this time. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. The information that comes through is truly groundbreaking, truly mind-blowing, and gives me shivers. All of it really does. So I'm going to wrap this up very soon. We have 1,229 people watching, so that's very, very good. I thank you all so very much. If you wouldn't mind sharing this out, the juiceage. And normal Flatterdays will be back very, very soon. I've been a little bit on the busy side, and we'll be back to normal transmissions. But in the meantime, I want to thank you so much, Jason, for bringing yourself to the Flat Earth British. You are welcome here anytime.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, man, I'd love that. I'd love that. That would be fantastic. So thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody in chat. And is there anything you want to wrap up with? I'll share all your books. I got your link in the chat, which links you up to all your literature. I'm aware, is it? On your channel.
Just archaics.com is the only link. It takes everybody everywhere.
Well, I've done that. That'll be fine. Okay, then. So I'm not that anyone doesn't know you anyway. So it looks like everyone's enjoyed the show. There you are. Social Web, a good show. And this lovely lady, Pamela, she's awfully excited. She's like, woohoo, to the whole world. God love her.
Yeah, she's one of my moderators.
Oh, right. You know,
actually, I've seen, I'm now looking on my tablet. Actually, I've seen like 7 of my moderators in your chat.
All right. Well, that's good. Much love to you all anyway. Really fantastic. The veil is lifting, and it's really fantastic. There's fantastic people here at the forefront of the awakening as well. Which is a gift. It's a gift to us all. And it's a present for a reason. It's called a present for a reason, because it's a present. We're grateful. Thanks, Jason. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for filling us in on all that information. That is just mind-blowing, all of it. So, see you soon. Thank you, guys. Thanks. There you are.